Meat grinder accident. The incident that occurred on the Thunder River Rapids ride on October 25, 2016, resulted in the deaths of 4 people. This event is considered the worst accident at an Australian theme park since the Sydney Ghost Train fire at Luna Park, Sydney, in 1979, due to the failure of one of the 2 large water pumps required for the water ride's operation. The water level dropped rapidly, and an empty raft became lodged on the support rails near the end of the conveyor belt, preventing it from reaching the unloading area. About a minute later, another raft carrying 6 passengers moved along the conveyor belt and collided with the stuck raft. Both rafts were flipped upwards by the movement of the conveyor belt. The first raft then fell back into an upright position on the support rails, while the second raft was forced into a vertical position by the conveyor belt. Its passengers either fell from the raft or became trapped near the conveyor belt mechanism, leading to the deaths of 4 of the passengers. After the conveyor was shut down by park staff, it was announced that 2 of the survivors were children. More than 7 paramedic crews, along with firefighters and police, arrived at the scene immediately. They recovered the bodies of the victims, who had suffered severe crushing and entrapment injuries. The drop accident happened on the night of March 22, 2022. Icon Park in Florida was crowded as usual. People were having fun, enjoying the machines, and visitors were lining up for the Orlando Freefall, one of the park's most thrilling rides. You all know this. It's that thing that goes up and then drops down rapidly. The tower lifts you to a height of 130 meters and releases the passengers downwards at speeds reaching 120 kilometers per hour. When it first opened, it was marketed as one of the tallest free-fall towers in the world. One of those who joined the queue that night was 14-year-old Tyre Sampson. He had come to have fun with his friends, and like the other visitors, he got on the ride. The ride started, but there was a massive problem that everyone ignored. Tyre was taller and heavier than his peers. Therefore, the safety harness of this machine was not suitable for people like Tyre. As a result, the harness was adjusted manually. This adjustment left a larger gap than normal between the seat and the harness. Of course, Tyre had already boarded, and no one up there had any idea what was about to happen. Suddenly, the free fall began, and just as they were slowing down after the rapid descent, Tyre flew out of the gap and hit the ground at high speed. He fell with such force that a loud impact sound was heard. The people still on the ride wanted to get out in a state of panic, and emergency teams were called immediately. Unfortunately, Tyre lost his life the moment the incident occurred. In the investigations following the accident, it was learned that the weight limit was 130 kilograms, but the staff ignored this and allowed Tyre, who weighed 170 kilograms, to ride. Additionally, after the accident, Tyre's family filed a lawsuit against the park and won approximately $310 million. Chain reaction accident. It was an ordinary day at a fairground pavilion in South Carolina, USA. The year was 1991, exactly the kind of day you'd imagine in those old American movies. The scene of the incident, the Ferris wheel. A group of teenagers was sitting in one of the gondolas, enjoying the ride, when a 17-year-old boy in the cabin, trying to prove how brave he was and show off to the girls, started rocking the gondola. Even though he was told to stop, he continued to rock it. and in a terrifying turn of events, he lost his balance and fell. By the way, as much as I call it a gondola, it was more like an open balcony. As the boy fell, he hit another gondola, and the impact caused that cabin to swing violently, throwing another girl inside out. However, the girl didn't fall to the ground. Somehow, her leg got stuck in one of the metal support beams of the Ferris wheel. At that moment, hundreds of people were looking up in horror. The young girl was left dangling from dozens of meters high, hanging by only one leg. In the meantime, the boy who fell died instantly, and that young girl, from the moment her leg got stuck, was left hanging from the Ferris wheel with a broken leg. The park staff immediately stopped the ride, although it took some time. As the minutes passed, panic among the crowd grew, and after the fire department arrived at the scene, they managed to rescue the girl, albeit with great difficulty. Her survival was a complete miracle, and all of these events occurred just because of the prank of a reckless teenager who didn't know what he was doing. Takeoff accident. In 2014, the Schlitterbahn Water Park in Kansas set a remarkable record. The park management had built the world's tallest water slide and named it with a German word, verrückt. The meaning was crazy. The slide was approximately 51 meters high. This is about the same height as looking down from the top of a 17-story building. Visitors would climb hundreds of steps, sit in 3-person rafts, and then be released down a very steep slide. The drop was so fast that after the rafts reached the lower section, they would pass over a giant hump in front of them. The designers had covered the top of the slide with metal poles and netting to prevent the rafts from flying into the air. This is exactly where their mistake lay, because instead of building a wider, solid material over a place where they could fly at such high speeds, they had installed thin metal poles. After this slide opened, some visitors had one common complaint. The slide didn't feel normal. There were reports that some rafts were lifting slightly. Passengers were rising from their seats, and they were nearly hitting the nets. On August 7, 2016, 10-year-old Caleb Schwab came to the park with his family. Like thousands of other visitors that day, he queued up to ride verrückt. He boarded the raft with 2 adults, one of whom was in the front. The first drop began. After descending rapidly and losing a bit of momentum, the raft moved toward the second hill at a very high speed. However, as they approached the hill, instead of going down, they flew into the air. The moment they flew up, Caleb's neck struck the metal poles and he died instantly. The 2 people sitting behind him escaped with non-lethal injuries. Caleb's family, who were waiting for him below, didn't even understand what had happened. Everyone was in shock. Bystanders kept Caleb's family away from where his body lay, because the scene was even more horrific than you might imagine. After the incident, the entire park was closed and demolished. Cable accident. The year was 2007. The location was Kentucky Kingdom Amusement Park. It was a hot summer day. Visitors were lining up for one of the park's most popular attractions, the Superman Tower of Power. Among those who boarded the tower that day was a 13-year-old girl. The ride started normally. The seats rose slowly and reached the top after a few seconds. Of course, some of you might be expecting another "the girl slipped and fell" scenario like in the previous stories, but something completely unexpected happened. Just before the drop began, a safety cable hanging from the top of the tower suddenly fell onto the girl. The girl was first injured in the head, but it wasn't life-threatening. She tried to throw the cable down, but it had already wrapped around her legs. Then the drop started. The falling cable was still attached to the top of the tower, meaning it couldn't go down. As the ride descended rapidly, The cable instantly severed the girl's legs. At first, no one understood what had happened, but 2 legs fell right in front of her mother and father, who were watching from below. The spectators suddenly started screaming in panic. Although the park staff stopped the ride, the incident had already occurred. When the rescue teams arrived at the scene, they were stunned. Investigations revealed that the cable had been hanging there for a while, but the staff had largely ignored it. So, what happened to the park afterward? It was closed, right? No, the park was not closed, and in fact, the Superman Tower of Power underwent renovations and reopened under a different name. Why? Because the girl miraculously managed to survive. After the incident, one of the employees quickly retrieved the legs and handed them to the medical team. At the hospital, one of the legs was successfully reattached, but the other could not be saved because it was too severely damaged. It is truly bizarre. Today, that girl continues her life with 1 leg.